The crystalline spires of the Aetherian Medical Center pierced the purple sky of Celestia Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 moons. Inside the quarantine wing, Chief Medical Director Zora Val pressed her silvery hands against the observation window, her luminescent eyes fixed on the suffering patient within. The Drachnid ambassador's scales had turned from vibrant green to a sickly gray. His breathing labored despite the advanced life support systems surrounding him. "Director," her assistant's melodic voice carried a note of desperation. "We've lost contact with the Meridian colony. The entire population has fallen silent." Zaraval's antennae drooped. Another world lost to the plague. The disease that had emerged 6 cycles ago had already claimed 12 worlds across 7 species. The Aetherian Alliance's most advanced medical technology, capable of rebuilding entire organ systems and transferring consciousness between bodies, stood powerless against this invisible enemy. "Show me the latest analysis," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight pressing against her chest. The holographic display materialized before her, streams of data flowing through the air like ribbons of light. The plague defied their understanding. It adapted faster than their quantum computers could analyze it, evolved quicker than their nanobots could counter it. "Impossible," she whispered, studying the latest mutation patterns. "It's as if it's learning." The door chimed, admitting High Counselor Thexan. His usual radiant aura had dimmed, matching the gravity of the situation. "Director, the Council has received a concerning report. The plague has breached the quarantine around the Centauri sector." Zaraval's heart skipped a beat. The Centauri sector housed some of their most advanced medical research facilities. If they had fallen. "There is." Thex and hesitated, his crystalline form shifting colors with anxiety. "One possibility we haven't explored. Counselor, our deep space probes recently discovered a species on the edges of known space. There." He paused again, searching for the right words. "Different." The holographic display shifted, showing a blue-green planet wrapped in swirling white clouds. "They call it Earth," Thexan continued. "And its inhabitants have survived something our archives suggest is impossible. They evolved on a death world." Zaraval's antennae twitched with interest. A death world. But the atmospheric toxicity alone would. "They'd breathe oxygen," Thex and interrupted. "Their world experiences extreme temperature variations, crushing gravity, and constant exposure to radiation. But that's not why I'm here." The display changed again, showing historical records that made Zaraval step back in shock. "They've survived thousands of plagues," she whispered, scrolling through the data. "Their entire history is marked by constant battles against microscopic enemies. Smallpox, bubonic plague, influenza, countless others. And they survived. Not through advanced technology, but through adaptation and determination. Their medical science appears primitive by our standards," Thexan admitted. "They still use chemical compounds instead of quantum restructuring. Their genetic modifications are in their infancy. But," he gestured to the dying Drachnid ambassador, "our advanced methods are failing. Perhaps it's time to try something primitive." Zaraval studied the human medical records with growing fascination. Where the Alliance had focused on preventing disease through environmental control and technological intervention, humans had developed robust immune systems and a deep understanding of fighting diseases on their own terms. They had turned their harsh world's challenges into strengths. "The Council has authorized first contact," Thexan said quietly. "We've already dispatched our fastest ship to their solar system. The question is, Director, will you go?" Zaraval looked once more at the suffering ambassador, then at the reports of falling colonies. Their civilization, with all its advancement and sophistication, stood on the brink. Pride had no place in survival. "Prepare my ship," she said firmly. "If these humans have survived countless plagues on their death world, perhaps they can teach us how to survive this one." As her ship later accelerated toward Earth, Zaraval reviewed the human medical archives again. Their methods seemed brutal, their approach almost barbaric by Aetherian standards. They had learned to fight disease not by creating perfect environments, but by embracing imperfection, by turning their bodies into battlegrounds where victory came through struggle rather than avoidance. "Director," her pilot called out, "we're picking up transmissions from the human planet. Their global information network. It's chaotic, decentralized, but incredibly resilient, just like them." Zaravel thought. The humans had built their civilization like they had built their immune systems, not through perfect design, but through constant adaptation, learning from every challenge, growing stronger from every struggle. As Earth grew larger in their view screen, Zaravel felt something she hadn't experienced since the plague began: hope. These humans, these Deathworld survivors, might view the plague differently than the Alliance's sophisticated yet sterile approach. Where the Alliance saw an invincible enemy, humans might see just another challenge to overcome. "Begin transmission," she commanded. "Let's hope these humans are willing to teach us what their harsh world has taught them. That survival isn't about avoiding the fight, but about learning how to win it." The fate of countless worlds now rested on a species that had turned their greatest weakness, their harsh, dangerous homeworld, into their greatest strength. Zaravel could only hope that strength would be enough to save them all. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her CDC laboratory, examining the alien virus samples through an electron microscope. Her team had been working around the clock since the Aetherians' arrival 3 weeks ago, studying a plague that had brought an advanced civilization to its knees. What she saw both terrified and fascinated her. "This isn't natural evolution," she muttered, making another notation in her tablet. Behind her, Director Zaravel's silvery form shifted nervously, the alien's luminescent eyes reflecting off the sterile surfaces of the lab equipment. "What do you mean, Dr. Chen?" The Aetherian's melodic voice carried an edge of concern. Sarah pulled up several holographic displays, comparing viral structures. "This plague of yours, it's engineered. See these protein structures? They're too perfect, too precisely designed. Nature is messier than this." Zaravel's antennae twitched violently. "Engineered. But who would? Someone who understands advanced biomechanical engineering, but doesn't understand basic viral evolution." Sarah interrupted, her dark eyes intense. "They created something too perfect, and that's their mistake." The lab door hissed open as Dr. James Rodriguez, Sarah's colleague in viral genetics, entered with a fresh batch of test results. "The computer models confirm it," he announced, his face grim. "This virus was designed to adapt using quantum principles. That's why your medical technology couldn't keep up. It was speaking the same language." Sarah nodded, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "But our primitive immune systems don't play by those rules. We're messy, unpredictable. Our bodies don't fight with precision. They fight with chaos." Zaravel moved closer to the displays, her silvery fingers trailing through the holographic images. "You sound almost pleased. Knowing your enemy is half the battle," Sarah replied, pulling up another set of data. "Humanity has fought engineered viruses before, not as sophisticated as this one, but we learned some hard lessons. Sometimes the old ways work best." The lab's central display lit up with a new alert. Dr. Rodriguez quickly accessed the incoming data, his eyes widening. "We're picking up similar viral signatures from the direction of the Cygnus arm, strong enough to suggest a point of origin." "The Nexus Empire," Zaravel whispered, her luminescent eyes dimming. "We should have known. They've always seen biological life as inefficient, messy. They believe in perfection through technology." Sarah's laugh surprised both the alien and her colleague. "Then they really don't understand biology. Life isn't about perfection, it's about adaptation. Every plague humanity has faced has made us stronger, not because we became perfect, but because we learned to adapt." She pulled up historical data from Earth's many pandemics, showing how human populations had developed resistances, how medical science had evolved through trial and error. Your people tried to fight this plague with perfect solutions, Director. We'll fight it the human way. Messy, aggressive, and with everything we've got. Over the next few days, the lab became a battlefield of old and new techniques. While the Aetherian scientists worked with their quantum computers and nanobots, the human team applied centuries of hard-won knowledge about fighting diseases. They cultivated cultures in Petri dishes, tested traditional antivirals, and studied how human immune systems responded to the engineered plague. It's fascinating, Sarah explained to a group of alien observers, pointing to a cellular reaction under a microscope. Your plague is too perfect, too predictable in its quantum states. Our immune systems introduce chaos into its perfectly ordered structure. We're essentially short-circuiting its ability to adapt. But your methods are so basic, one of the Aetherian scientists observed, watching as Sarah worked with simple chemical compounds. Sometimes the basics work best, she replied, not looking up from her work. You tried to outthink this virus. We're going to outlast it, outfight it, and out-evolve it. That's what we do best. The breakthrough came not from the advanced Aetherian laboratories, but from a combination of human immunology and their understanding of viral evolution. Sarah's team discovered that the plague's perfect quantum structure made it vulnerable to the chaotic, unpredictable nature of biological immune responses. It's like teaching a chess master to play Calvin ball, Sarah explained to Zoraval, referring to a game where the rules constantly changed. The plague doesn't know how to handle systems that don't follow its predetermined patterns. As they prepared the first trials of their treatment, a priority message arrived from the Aetherian High Council. The Nexus Empire had begun expanding aggressively, using the chaos caused by their engineered plague to seize weakened systems. They're coming, Zoraval announced, her voice heavy. They believe they're purging imperfection from the galaxy. And now we know they created this plague to do exactly that. Sarah's expression hardened as she looked at the viral samples, then at the treatment her team had developed. A treatment that worked precisely because it embraced the imperfection the Nexus Empire so despised. Let them come, she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's long history of survival. They're about to learn what every virus that's ever attacked humanity learned. Perfection isn't everything. Sometimes, you need to be messy to survive. The massive quarantine ship Nightingale drifted in high orbit around the Aetherian colony world of New Dawn, its hull marked with the distinctive red cross that had become a symbol of hope across the galaxy. Inside, Dr. Marcus Wong moved through isolation wards, filled with patients from a dozen different species, his movements practiced and confident despite the alien environment. Your quarantine protocols are unnecessarily restrictive, complained High Commander Lixen, his crystalline form shifting colors with frustration as he watched through the observation window. We're losing valuable time with all these isolation procedures. Marcus continued his methodical work, checking containment seals and monitoring patient vital signs. With all due respect, Commander, these restrictive protocols are why this colony still has living beings to save. The plague doesn't care about efficiency. The past month had seen human medical teams deployed across affected worlds, bringing with them centuries of experience in fighting diseases. Where the Aetherian Alliance had tried to solve the crisis with technology alone, humanity had arrived with something far more valuable, hard-won knowledge of how to survive when technology wasn't enough. Patients showing improved neural response, called out Nurse Maria Santos from a nearby ward, her voice slightly muffled by her hazmat suit. The modified antibodies are working. Marcus nodded, making notes on his tablet. The treatment they'd developed combined human immunological principles with Aetherian quantum technology. Messy, unpredictable, but undeniably effective. They'd already saved 3 worlds that the Alliance had considered lost. Director Chen's latest report just came in, Maria announced, bringing up a holographic display. The Nexus Empire's plague is mutating again, but slower now. Our chaotic approach is forcing it to work harder. The knowledge that the plague was engineered had changed everything. The Nexus Empire, in their quest for technological perfection, had created a weapon that embodied their philosophy: precise, efficient, and utterly predictable. They never expected it to encounter the brutal randomness of natural immune systems, especially those evolved on a death world. A commotion at the quarantine ship's dock drew their attention. A new group of patients had arrived, these from a world on the edge of Nexus space. Marcus rushed to assist with intake procedures, his mind already cataloging symptoms and planning treatments. "They're different," one of the Aetherian medical technicians noted, scanning the new arrivals. "The plague's pattern. It's not following the usual progression." Marcus studied the readings, his expression grim behind his protective visor. "They're trying to adapt their weapon, but they still don't understand what they're fighting against." He pulled up a comparison of human immune responses to various diseases throughout history, showing how Earth's pathogens had shaped human evolution. "See these patterns? Every plague we survived made us stronger, not because we became perfect, but because we became adaptable." The ship's alert system suddenly blared to life. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," announced the ship's eye. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen's sister, her expression serious. "The Nexus Empire has launched an offensive," she reported without preamble. "They're targeting medical facilities, trying to prevent us from distributing the treatment. But they've made a critical mistake." The display split to show tactical data. The Nexus Empire's ships, like their plague, were marvels of engineering. Perfect in design, precise in execution, and utterly predictable to anyone who understood their underlying philosophy. "They think like their plague does," Marcus realized aloud. "They can't handle chaos." Admiral Chen nodded. "Exactly. Which is why Earth Command has authorized Operation Wildfire. Dr. Wong, you're about to get some new patients, our first volunteers." Marcus understood immediately. They weren't just fighting a plague anymore. They were preparing for war. And humanity's greatest weapon wouldn't be ships or guns, but the very adaptability that had allowed them to survive on their death world. "Prepare the gene therapy labs," he ordered his team. "If the Nexus Empire wants to use disease as a weapon, we'll show them why that was a mistake." Over the next several days, the quarantine ship became something else entirely. While continuing to treat victims of the plague, they began enhancing volunteer soldiers with modified versions of the human immune system. The process was dangerous, unpredictable, exactly what they needed. "You're introducing controlled chaos into their systems," Marcus explained to Commander Lixen, who watched the procedures with a mix of horror and fascination. "Making them more like us. Messy, adaptable, resilient. Like a virus," the commander observed. Marcus smiled grimly. "Like life. Real life, not the sterile perfection the Nexus Empire dreams of." They wanted to reshape the galaxy in their image. Instead, they're about to learn why evolution favors adaptability over perfection. As he watched another group of volunteers emerge from the gene therapy chambers, their bodies now hosting enhanced versions of humanity's robust immune system, Marcus couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Nexus Empire had created their plague to enforce their vision of perfection on the galaxy. Instead, they had brought forth humanity's greatest gift: the ability to take something terrible and turn it into a tool for survival. "Send word to Earth Command," he instructed Maria. "Tell them the first wave of immune warriors is ready. The real fight is about to begin." Admiral Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Pasteur as the combined human-Aetherian fleet moved into position around the Nexus Empire's primary research facility. The massive structure floated in space like a perfect geometric crystal, its surfaces reflecting the light of nearby stars with cold precision. "Battle group reports ready," announced her tactical officer. "Modified immune warriors are in position." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. The fleet before her represented something unprecedented. Warships converted into massive medical deployment vessels, their weapons replaced with delivery systems for their biological countermeasures. It was warfare on a microscopic scale, fought with antibodies instead of antimatter. "They're hailing us," reported communications. Audio only. "This is Architect Prime Vector 9. Came the artificial voice of the Nexus Empire's leader. "Your biological imperfections will not save you. Perfection is inevitable." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "This is Admiral Chen of Earth. You should have studied our history better before you decided to use disease as a weapon. Humanity didn't survive on our death world by being perfect. We survived by being stubborn." The first wave of Nexus ships appeared exactly as predicted, their formations mathematically precise. Perfect. Predictable. The combined fleet scattered in seemingly chaotic patterns, a maneuver that would have horrified traditional military strategists but made perfect sense to anyone who understood viral warfare. "They're launching their enhanced plague," reported Dr. Wong from his position aboard the medical frigate Jenner. "New strain, just as we expected. Quantum signature is consistent with our models." "Deploy the immune warriors," Sarah ordered. From the fleet's ships emerged specialized pods containing soldiers who had volunteered to be enhanced with modified human immune systems. Their bodies now hosted weaponized versions of humanity's natural defenses, refined through generations of surviving on Earth. "Your crude biological weapons cannot defeat perfection," the Architect Prime declared as the Nexus ships launched waves of their engineered plague. "Watch us," Sarah replied, then cut the transmission. "All ships, execute Operation Darwin." The battle that followed defied conventional military doctrine. The immune warriors, their bodies now living weapons, intercepted the plague strains and began transforming them. Just as human immune systems had learned to adapt to countless diseases on Earth, these enhanced warriors turned the Nexus Empire's weapon against itself. "Multiple breaches detected in their facility," reported Tactical. "The modified plague is working exactly as designed. It's evolving faster than their systems can adapt." Sarah watched as the perfect crystalline structure of the Nexus facility began to show imperfections. Their own weapon, twisted and reformed by human biology, was teaching them a harsh lesson about the power of adaptation. "Admiral," Dr. Wong's voice carried excitement, "we're detecting widespread system failures in their network. The organic components of our modified plague are overwhelming their quantum processors. They literally can't compute the chaos we're introducing." The Architect Prime's voice crackled over the comm again, but this time it wavered with something approaching fear. "What have you done?" "The patterns, they're degrading. This is impossible." "No," Sarah corrected. "This is evolution. This is what happens when you try to enforce perfection on an imperfect universe. Life finds a way, and it's rarely the way you expect." The Nexus ships began to break formation as their perfectly ordered systems encountered something they couldn't process: genuine, unpredictable biological adaptation. Their weapons, designed to maintain perfect quantum states, faltered against defenses that changed with every encounter. "Their primary research core is destabilizing," reported Science Officer Lixen, his crystalline form gleaming with excitement. "The modified human immune responses are causing cascade failures throughout their network." Sarah watched as the mighty Nexus Empire's flagship facility began to break apart, its perfect symmetry disrupted by the chaotic forces they had dismissed as primitive. Their own plague, transformed by human biology into something wildly unpredictable, had become their undoing. "All ships, maintain distance," she ordered as the facility's reactor began to overload. "Let them see what happens when you try to perfect something that's meant to be chaotic." The explosion, when it came, was anything but perfect. The facility broke apart in jagged, irregular pieces, a final testament to the triumph of adaptation over perfection. "Multiple surrender signals detected," reported communications. "The remaining Nexus ships are standing down." Sarah nodded, then opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Chen. The battle is won, but our work isn't done. Begin deployment of medical ships to all affected sectors. Today we showed the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to take what tries to kill us and turn it into something that makes us stronger. As the fleet moved to secure the sector, Sarah couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Nexus Empire had tried to perfect the galaxy through disease, never understanding that disease itself had helped make humanity perfect in its imperfection. They had chosen the wrong species to wage biological warfare against, the species that had turned their death world into a crucible of adaptation. 1 year after the fall of the Nexus Empire, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different from its original pristine design. The perfect crystalline walls now bore deliberate imperfections, reminders of the lesson that had reshaped galactic civilization. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, addressing representatives from hundreds of worlds, her voice carrying across the chamber. The Human Aetherian Medical Exchange Program has now successfully treated over 10,000 worlds, she announced, gesturing to the holographic display showing spreading paths of recovery across the galaxy. But more importantly, we've helped these worlds develop their own adaptive defense systems. In the audience, Director Zaraval's luminescent eyes shone with pride. The Aetherian Alliance had undergone its own evolution, learning to embrace the unpredictable nature of biological life rather than trying to control it. Their once sterile medical facilities now incorporated Earth-inspired natural healing environments. The last strongholds of the Nexus Empire have been converted into research centers, Sarah continued. Their quest for perfection nearly destroyed us all. But from their failure, we've learned something profound about the nature of survival. The display shifted to show the transformed Nexus facilities, where once stood monuments to geometric perfection, now grew organic structures that adapted to their environments. The Empire's quantum computers had been reprogrammed to work with biological systems rather than trying to perfect them. Dr. Marcus Wong, now chief of Xenomedicine for the combined fleet, stepped forward to join Sarah. We've discovered something remarkable in the aftermath of the plague, he reported. Species that survived the modified virus have shown increased adaptive capabilities. The very weapon meant to perfect them instead taught them to embrace change. The evidence was visible in the council chamber itself. Representatives from dozens of species showed subtle signs of adaptation, stronger immune responses, increased cellular regeneration, and most importantly, a new understanding of strength through diversity. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't just the cure, Marcus explained. It was the understanding that imperfection isn't weakness. It's the engine of evolution, the force that drives life to grow stronger through adversity. In the medical bay of the Nightingale, now a teaching hospital, students from across the galaxy learned this lesson firsthand. They studied not just human medical techniques, but the philosophy behind them, the understanding that healing wasn't about achieving perfection, but about helping life adapt and grow stronger. The Nexus Empire failed, Sarah concluded her address, because they saw the universe as a problem to be solved. We survived because we saw it as a challenge to be embraced. Every plague they engineered, every perfect weapon they created, became part of our strength because we didn't try to defeat them. We learned to adapt to them. The council chamber erupted in applause, but it wasn't the orderly, synchronized approval of the old days. It was chaotic, organic, real, just like life itself. Later, in the newly established Earth Embassy, Sarah met with representatives from former Nexus worlds. The crystalline beings had undergone their own transformation, learning to incorporate organic components into their previously pure technological forms. We thought perfection was the ultimate goal, one former Nexus administrator admitted, their surface now showing beautiful, irregular patterns. We never understood that perfection is stagnation. Life must change to survive. That's humanity's greatest strength, Sarah replied, watching through the window as ships from across the galaxy docked at the medical station. We never tried to be perfect. Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the most advanced. It's about being able to adapt. In the years that followed, humanity's influence spread not through conquest or technological superiority, but through their understanding of survival. The galaxy learned that the species they had once dismissed as primitive Deathworlders had developed something far more valuable than perfect technology. They had developed the ability to turn adversity into advantage. Earth became known not as a death world, but as a cradle of adaptation, where harsh conditions had forged a species that understood the true nature of survival. The human immune system, once seen as a crude biological process, was now studied as a model for adaptation across the galaxy. And in the great medical libraries of the Aetherian Alliance, a new wing was dedicated to what they called the human paradigm, the understanding that strength comes not from avoiding challenges, but from learning to adapt to them. The plea that was meant to perfect the galaxy had instead taught it to embrace imperfection, turning an engineered apocalypse into a catalyst for evolution. As Sarah looked out at the changed galaxy, she thought about Earth, the death world that had prepared humanity for this moment without them ever knowing it. Every disease they had survived, every harsh condition they had adapted to, had taught them the lesson they would eventually teach the galaxy, that life's greatest strength isn't in its perfection, but in its endless capacity to adapt, to evolve, and to turn what tries to destroy it into what makes it stronger.